Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. In this video, I want to take a quick look at the chart of Bitcoin. In fact, there's some interesting things happening recently on the Bitcoin charts. I want to pull this closer and really look at what's been happening here with the most recent volatile downside action that happened here, as you can see. And also a quick look at the chart of Ethereum, because Ethereum's actions can also be very interesting and important for Bitcoin as well. All right, guys, join me. All right, guys, welcome back. So I want to first of all begin by looking at the chart of Bitcoin before we turn our attention to Ethereum in just a few minutes. So as far as Bitcoin is concerned, obviously there was a strong downside move we saw recently in the past week, which pushed Bitcoin down below 27K. Now I should say that in the members video, in fact, let me play for you what I said to our members about a week or so ago, and then we'll come back. As long as Bitcoin stays below this region, between 30K to 30,500, the odds still favor more of a decline into this region that we have down here, as I mentioned, between 27K to 26K. But actually 27K would be the more important support level. All right, guys, welcome back. So as you heard in the members video, I actually expected Bitcoin to come and test the 27K region here, about this region, but just near 27K. However, I should say that the test of the 26K level, even though I thought it was possible for it to come down to 26K, I did not think it was likely. So I was wrong about that, but nevertheless, we did see a very strong, powerful decline here. So here's how I see things, and I think it's always a good idea to pull this back a little bit and see it in perspective. Now notice that even though Bitcoin did see a very strong decline, it did not go below the June lows, as yet anyway. But very interestingly, it has not broken an important trend line. Now when I say trend line, we need to really pull this back a bit. As you can see, let's just pull this back all the way to about 2020. Okay, there we go. Now notice this chart. So look at the low here. Notice the lows of 2020. This is after the panic that occurred, as you may recall, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic crisis and panic here. Notice that was the big drop we saw, and that formed a low here, as you can see. And that low, if we connect that to this recent low here, these recent lows, okay, when I say recent, I mean the lows of November last year and also January of this year. Notice we have a trend line support. Now notice that Bitcoin has not broken this yellow trend line, this long-term trend line support. And that's very important, because as long as Bitcoin can protect and respect this trend line, in other words, as long as Bitcoin can stay above this yellow trend line here, which is approximately not far away from 23K. Okay, so as long as Bitcoin can stay above this trend line, I can maintain still a long-term bullish perspective. By the way, there's one more thing I need to mention here in regards to this Bitcoin chart. So apart from this trend line support, notice something else very interesting. So if you grab this tool in most charts have this. This is actually called trend-based fib extension in TradingView. Trend-based fib extension. Just grab that. And if you draw from the highs of, in other words, if you measure the high from April to June lows, the April highs to the June lows, then you project that from the highs of July, notice you will get this nice, interesting, symmetrical projection. That's the red line on my chart right there. That's the 100% symmetrical extension or projection, okay, which is the level we just touched recently. I believe this is the logarithmic setting of the trend-based fib extension. So I'm using it on a logarithmic chart, and I'm also using the logarithmic setting of this particular Fibonacci tool, okay? So in other words, look at the 100% logarithmic extension or projection. If you measure, in other words, putting it quite simply, if you were to measure that initial decline in April, the 100% projection gives you this red line just near the level we touched very recently. That's the red line we just touched very recently at 25,397, or let's just say 25,400. Okay, now there's also another level right below this, which is the 1382 extension, the 138.2 Fibonacci extension. That puts it approximately 23,289, or let's just say 23,300, keeping it simple there. So that's another important extension we have to keep in mind, which, by the way, the reason why that's important is because that merges with the trend line that I just drew, as you can see, the yellow trend line that I just showed you a few minutes ago. So there's a lot of merging. I like when several levels come and merge at a specific zone or location. Okay, so a region or a zone of support. In other words, guys, I actually think that 23K level 23K is going to be a very important support in my view for Bitcoin. That level, that trend line, and this level about 23K needs to be protected to keep the bullish picture intact. Also, you will notice something else here from Bitcoin's chart. Notice that this decline that occurred very recently really brought it down to the August highs of last year. These are the August highs. We tested this level now, you can see here, and now the second time round, retesting that level, approximately 25K, 25,200. And also we're not far away. As you can see, we're not that far away from the June low. This level here. Okay. Now I know previously I said that if Bitcoin were to close below the June lows, that would actually be very bearish. But what I've done is I've modified this now to this level, the trend line support at near 23K. Okay. But there's something else I want to mention here, and that is Ethereum. So I'll come back to Bitcoin in a few minutes, but the bottom line is that Ethereum also is forming a very interesting chart, and it's worth paying attention to what's happening on Ethereum because often what happens on Ethereum, sometimes Ethereum can be a good leading indicator for Bitcoin. Not always, but sometimes it can be. But it's always a good idea to keep both these charts in mind when you're doing analysis of Bitcoin. Notice that Ethereum still maintains itself in a nice uptrend. So despite this really big drop we've had here, nevertheless, we're still above the trend line, this yellow trend line. That meets us at approximately 1500, approximately. I would say this level is also going to be very important, the March low at approximately 1370 or 1369, very important support level for Ethereum, and I would say for Bitcoin as well, because of the correlation between these two. And something else, also notice that if you were to do the same thing that I just mentioned a few minutes ago about symmetry, if you were to measure this decline from the highs of April to the lows of June, project that using logarithmic extensions, same way I just showed you a few minutes ago, that would give us the 100% projection at about the same level we reached recently, about 1534. Okay, there it is. So that was the level, that's the red line you see on my chart there, which is very close to that trend line support. So in other words, what this tells us is that Ethereum seems to be tracing out a corrective, what appears to be a corrective ABC pattern, A, B, C, corrective pattern on Ethereum. Okay, so in other words, a correction in the price. All right, so that's provided, by the way, I'm only going to maintain this view. This is a correction, not a reversal, provided that Ethereum protects this area. Very important for it to protect, ideally, the trend line support, which is just about 1500. I would say 1500 is going to be a very important support for Ethereum. But even if 1500 does not hold, I would say this low of March, which is 1370. These levels must hold on Ethereum to keep the bullish picture, for the bullish picture to remain intact, the long-term uptrend. Because any break, okay, even though I don't expect this to happen, so I'm not bearish on Ethereum or Bitcoin, but if Ethereum were to break down below both these levels, so the trend line support at 1500 approximately, and break down below the March lows, which is 1370, then I would have to change my mind, because that would force us to change our mind to become bearish on Ethereum and potentially Bitcoin. Let me say again, I don't expect this. I don't think these levels are going to break. Again, I maintain that bullish long-term picture, provided we stay above these levels, provided Ethereum protects and stays above 1370 and also ideally 1500, but this zone must be protected. And also one more thing, you'll notice that I put this green line on my chart. So yes, I do still think we're in an uptrend despite this correction. I still think we're in an uptrend on Ethereum, but that's provided also, I would like to see confirmation. I want to see confirmation above 1800. Once Ethereum gets above, if Ethereum can push us above 1800 here, that would be a first initial clue that Ethereum has bottomed here, and probably Bitcoin as well. Okay, so watch this level very carefully at 1800. If Ethereum can get some nice green bars, some nice rally going above 1800 in the next few days and weeks, that would be a good sign that this likely correction, a probable ABC correction, has come to an end and that we're probably going to start the next wave up towards much higher levels. That's provided we can see a strong rally and close above 1800 here. Okay, so keep that level in mind. Going back to our chart of Bitcoin, that really is my analysis so far as Bitcoin and Ethereum is concerned. In other words, what I'm saying is that if Ethereum can get above 1800 here and maintain above this trend line, that would be a positive factor, a positive sign for Bitcoin as well. But let me just say one more thing. I know there are some people watching this video who disagree with me, and that's okay, we can disagree, but I know there are some people out there who think that this is not a correction. So according to some other people out there, they believe that this is not a correction, but that this entire pattern and that this entire drop is the beginning of a major crash. Because here's the thing, and it's important to appreciate this. If this is not a correction, okay, if this drop here is not a corrective pattern, then there is only one plausible alternative out there. Okay, the only real plausible alternative is that this is the beginning of a major crash or reversal. Let me say again, I don't think this is a reversal. But if you believe, so if those people believe that this is not a correction, then what is the other choice? Really, the only other choice is this is the beginning of a crash. In other words, in their perspective, this is the beginning of a major crash to the downside, which would take us below the lows of October, in other words, below 15K, below that 15K level. In their perspective, again, that's not what I think. All right, but in their perspective, those who are very bearish, they think this is the beginning of a major reversal and crash below 15K and probably below 10K. Let me say again, as I've said this before in this video, that's not my view. That is not my high probability perspective, because as long as, again, sorry for repeating this point, but as I've said in this video, as long as Bitcoin can respect this trendline support, okay, this trendline support, which again brings us about 23K. So provided Bitcoin can stay above that 23K trendline support, which is a long-term trend line, then I remain bullish. And as I mentioned before, there's another level here, the 1382 extension, which is about the same level, about 23K approximately there. Okay, so that's really my view, keeping it simple. As long as Bitcoin remains above this important support level of 23K, and also I would say as long as Ethereum can protect and stay above its trendline support, which is 1500, and the lower end is 1370, as long as it stays above this important zone of support, then I can maintain that long-term bullish perspective on both these charts, on both Ethereum and yes, also on Bitcoin as well. And that's my view at the moment. So all I'm waiting for is just getting some extra degree of confirmation that this corrective pattern is coming to an end. And I think we're going to see a strong bounce coming on these charts, likely either in the next few days or in the next few weeks. I think a strong bounce is coming for these particular charts, either a strong bounce or some kind of a bottoming formation on these charts. Again, provided that this important trendline support is protected as long as it stays above that, because below that I would have to change my mind and become very bearish. But again, I maintain that long-term bullish perspective, provided we stay above this trendline support near 23K. Okay, that's what we have here on the charts. Make sure you go ahead and watch my members video, because in today's members video, I've covered the charts of Bitcoin from an Elliott wave perspective in quite a lot of detail. So go ahead and see that. Plus also we covered the chart of the stock market and also gold and silver. So we covered gold and silver as well in the members video. So if you're not a member, you can join and become a member on that link. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to seeing you in the next video update. Bye for now.